Link TV, connecting you to the world. Link TV is viewer supported. Watch more at linktv.org.
Link TV presents Mosaic World News from the Middle East. Here are today's top stories.
Assad bleeds Syria dry on the country's bloodiest day yet. Yemen's Saleh vows to step down after 90 days again. And TLC debuts new reality show, All American Muslim. Mosaic, world news from the Middle East, begins now.
On the ground, the Syrian opposition marked Tuesday's dawn of freedom. It also called for additional demonstrations tomorrow on a day dubbed Wednesday of National Brotherhood. In conjunction, the regime escalated its military operations in Idlib, Homs, and Daraa, following the deaths of nearly 70 people at the hands of Assad's brigades, as confirmed by Syrian activists. In Damascus, the Syrian news agency said that 1,180 detainees who were implicated in the incidents in Syria, but who don't have blood on their hands, were released from jail.
8 months have passed since the launch of the unprecedented protests on March 15th, but the movement has not lost momentum. The blood that was shed and the lives that were smothered are fueling the revolution, with no signs of retreat or surrender on the horizon. In response to calls for marking the 8-month anniversary of the anti-regime protests, supporters of the Syrian opposition took to the streets on a day dubbed Tuesday's Dawn of Freedom. The protesters renewed their demands for toppling President Bashar al-Assad and his regime. Opposition websites released images of students rallying in Duma and chanting slogans in support of the revolution in the presence of security officers loyal to the regime. The protesters refused to obey the orders of security officers to board buses carrying Assad supporters. This mobilization comes as Syrian residents held funeral processions for the victims killed in the Day of Prisoners protests. More than 60 protesters were killed by the gunfire of Assad's brigades. Most of them were killed in fierce clashes between defectors and the Syrian army in Daraa. Meanwhile, the opposition continues to mobilize and urge its supporters to stage massive demonstrations under the theme Wednesday of National Brotherhood amid a dramatic military escalation on the ground. Opposition websites reported that Assad's brigades, backed by dozens of military vehicles and buses, stormed the area of al-Zabadani. In addition, a curfew was imposed in the city of Kafr Ruma in the countryside of Idlib amid massive explosions. The Syrian Observatory for Human Rights said that fierce clashes erupted between the conventional army and defectors in the area of Matana, killing several troops and injuring several others. Opposition sources said the city of Talbisa in Homs has been witnessing heavy gunfire since the early morning hours, amid reports that security forces are terrorizing residents and preventing them from leaving their homes. The local coordination committees reported that heavy gunfire erupted in the northern, western, and southern parts of the village of Hara and Daraa, where a new wave of army defections was reported. This news comes after reports of artillery shelling and gunfire launched by the 15th Army Division entrenched near the city of Sana'a, Maine. Incoming reports confirmed that the areas of Duma and Khirbat Ghazala and Horan continue to witness random sweeps. Security forces backed by the Shabiha and bulldozers stormed the area of Khirbat Ghazala this morning. These developments on the ground followed massive nighttime demonstrations, which were organized to condemn the bloody Syrian Prisoners' Day. In another related development, activists expect hundreds of people to be killed this month, which would make it the bloodiest month since the spark of protests 8 months ago.
الآن إلى اليمن.
Yemeni President Ali Abdullah Saleh said he is ready to relinquish power based on the Gulf Initiative while setting a timetable to implement it and conduct elections. He hinted that he had no objection to stepping down within 90 or even 60 days.
In the Yemeni capital Sana'a, a massive demonstration took place demanding to try President Saleh and his associates on charges of killing peaceful protesters and shelling residential neighborhoods in Taiz, Arhab and Sana'a. The protesters condemned the Gulf Initiative and the political settlement, vowing to escalate their peaceful revolution.
The marches that flooded the streets of the Yemeni capital, Sana'a, reaffirmed the public's demands since the revolution began in February, trying President Ali Abdullah Saleh and his associates on charges of killing protesters and shelling residential neighborhoods in Sana'a, Taiz, Arhab, and other cities. The protesters condemned the Gulf Initiative that has been brought to the scene. This march came a day after President Saleh announced in a statement that he is ready to step down in accordance with the Gulf Initiative, but only after signing it and deciding on the relevant implementation mechanisms.
The Gulf Initiative came and we welcomed it, and we will all cooperate with it in a positive way. It was signed by the leadership of the General People's Congress Party, and it needs to be signed by the President. The President's signature is welcomed, but we want the mechanisms first.
The Yemeni President's statements came at the end of UN envoy Jamal bin Omar's visit to Yemen. He held talks with various political groups as part of what he described as efforts to push the political process forward in order to reach a political settlement based on the Gulf Initiative and enter the transitional phase as soon as possible. It is too early to speak of the results of bin Omar's talks. However, the dispute appears to be obvious now. The opposition wants President Saleh to sign the initiative first and then talk about its implementation mechanisms, contrary to what the President calls for.
However,
the Gulf Initiative, which is currently being discussed as the basis for the upcoming settlement, has never gained the approval of the protesters. Protests still take place on a daily basis in numerous Yemeni cities, raising a clear, specific, and unified demand: Saleh's departure without any conditions or protection, and a trial against him and the symbols of his regime for the acts of violence they committed against the people, which continues to this day.
المبادرة الخليجية ومماطلات الصالح المختلفة المتعلقة بتفاصيلها
Saleh has repeatedly procrastinated in signing the Gulf Initiative for reasons pertaining to disputed details. The outcome of UN envoy Jamal bin Omar's visit depends on the Gulf Initiative and the public opinion of the rebelling street, which not only rejects the Gulf Initiative, but also rejects any political deal providing President Saleh an exit without trial. These parallel events keep Yemen stalled in the face of many possibilities, just like always.
Dozens of Bahraini employees staged a sit-in at the Ministry of Labor in the country's central region for the 7th consecutive day to protest their arbitrary termination after taking part in the recent protests. The rally comes in response to a call issued by activists on social media websites. Several employees from the public and private sectors took part in the sit-in. The employees were fired from their jobs based on their political orientation and after taking part in peaceful demonstrations last March. The ministry's officials refused to meet with the protesters.
صحيفة الوسط البحرينية قالت أنها تلقت سيلا من الاتصالات.
The Bahraini Wasat newspaper said that it had received a flood of phone calls from the residents of Mahmir and Nuwaydrat complaining about the suffocating gas surrounding their homes. The newspaper quoted the residents saying that poison gas is seeping into their homes, prompting many to leave their homes. The residents confirmed that several children were transported to hospitals after suffering from gas inhalation. Some residents said the gas is from the factories that were built near the residential neighborhoods in Mahmir and Nuwaydrat. Experts told the newspaper that the factories are posing a threat to residents in the area. Meanwhile, a Bahraini court handed prison terms ranging from 6 months to a year to residents accused of taking part in peaceful protests. In another development, the Bahraini appellate court has adjourned the trial of the women arrested in Manama's city center mall until Wednesday.
As the crisis continues to rage in Bahrain, so does the campaign of crackdowns. In the latest campaign, the authority deployed its judiciary to quell the citizens. The criminal court in Manama issued prison terms ranging from 6 months to a year to residents accused of taking part in the recent peaceful protests. The appellate court has adjourned the trial of the women who were arrested in Manama's city center mall until Wednesday. The defendant's attorney, Reem Halaf, filed a complaint during the court session citing acts of abuse committed against her clients.
What the court did, not this one, but the preliminary court, was a blatant violation of our rights as a defense team. The court refused to hear any of our complaints, and it keeps postponing the trial for review. The case is being built with evidence provided by the district attorney's office. None of the evidence provided by the defense team has been admitted. The court is refusing to listen to any of our witnesses.
For her part, attorney Zahra Massoud asked the court to disclose the documents and evidence on which the charges are based, as well as allow the defense witnesses to testify. On the ground, the regime's forces on Muharraf Island seized a secondary girls' school bus on charges that one of the students chanted anti-regime slogans, prompting families of the detainees to rush to the police station in Samahij. Politically, Al-Wifaq Society expressed dismay over the authorities' warning of the presence of underground cells, plots, and mobilizations in the country. Al-Wifaq confirmed that the Bahraini people's mobilization is peaceful and widespread, and that their demands are specific and known to the public. It also called on the authority to meet the international community's demands by implementing serious reforms and expediting democratic transformation in the country, affirming that the winds of change are coming to the region no matter what. The Sahrawi people continue to suffer from the Moroccan occupation's repression. New images emerging from the occupied Al-Dakhla government show a Sahrawi female citizen being severely beaten by Moroccan police, causing her to lose her eyesight. This took place in light of the deterioration of the refugees' situation due to scarce aid. Our correspondent Fauzi Italy reports.
Her only crime was chanting for self-determination in her occupied country, and only one part of her tragedy is revealed in these leaked images. Leila Boussoula lost her eyesight while being abused by Moroccan police, but her vision shines through the faith and rightfulness of the cause.
We were peacefully chanting slogans, peacefully, and Moroccan aggression interfered. Even if I were to regain my eyesight, I would not abandon my goal.
And from inside the occupation, she cries out in the face of an unjust siege, imposed to conceal the scale of violations that may parallel those that took place in Gdeim Izik.
They attacked residential neighborhoods and killed Sahrawis. A number of people were martyred. They burned houses and cars and did not spare anyone.
On the eastern side of the separation wall, a different kind of suffering is endured every day by the Sahrawi refugees due to the scarcity of aid. The Sahrawi Red Crescent's containers are almost completely empty of essential supplies.
We are sending out an urgent call to the international community to pay more attention to the situation of Sahrawi refugees and provide enough aid so that the refugees can have their most basic needs met.
The support from organizations is scarce.
The humanitarian aid delivered to the refugee camp is always very scarce.
People have lost weight due to the lack of nutrition.
The Sahrawi people are tormented between the fists of repression and harassment in the occupied regions, and the clamps of displacement and the scarcity of aid in the refugee camps. The alarm bell is sounding on both sides.
Israel plans to call tenders for the construction of more than 800 settler units in East Jerusalem Al-Quds. According to the Housing Ministry, the buildings will be constructed in 2 settlement neighborhoods and the tendering process will begin in 1 or 2 months. The new construction plans come as the Palestinian Authority is trying to secure UN recognition of a sovereign Palestinian state with Al-Quds as its capital. Israel's settlement activities were a major factor in the collapse of direct talks between Israel and the Palestinian Authority and are expected to further endanger the prospects of negotiations. The United Nations and other international organizations have repeatedly condemned such Israeli actions as illegal. Meanwhile, Israeli troops have demolished 4 Palestinian homes near the city of Jericho in the West Bank. Israel says the houses were razed as they were built without permit and endangered a nearby archaeological site. An Israeli Defense Ministry spokesman has said the land is to be used by Israeli settlement Vered Jericho, that is, located nearby. One of the property owners said this is his 3rd house demolished by Israel since 2004. A UN report has warned that the demolitions have alarmingly increased in the West Bank in the first half of this year, with 356 structures razed and 700 Palestinians displaced. It also says the demolitions seem to be concentrated in areas targeted for settlement expansion. An adjudication by the Australian Press Council has found that articles published by an Australian newspaper have inaccurately portrayed the Boycott Israel movement in Australia as anti-Semitic. Rihab Sharida reports.
The Australian Press Council has found that articles published in the Australian newspaper in July this year relating to Boycott Israel protests were in breach of the Council's standards of practice.
I initiated the complaint because I have been to BDS demonstrations and I know that the chants that are chanted, that the policies of the people who go to those protests and the motivations for people to go to those protests are criticism of Israeli policy.
The articles in question refer to a string of protests that took place outside a number of Max Brenner cafes around the country. The franchise cafe is owned by an Israeli confectionery company, the Strauss Group, that prides itself on its support for the Israeli military. Max Brenner supporters have welcomed the decision by the Australian Press Council and have reaffirmed that Max Brenner is a legitimate target of their campaign. The complaint was brought to the Press Council by 2 people involved in the BDS campaign about 2 specific articles. The Council concluded that the headline on the print version, Anti-Jew Protest Condemned, was a clear breach of the Council's standards of practice because it reported a matter of opinion as a fact.
The headline stated as a fact something which was just an opinion, namely that it was an anti-Jew protest, and in fact the organisers themselves said it's not, it's a protest against Israeli government policies. The
protests gained a lot of attention in Parliament and in the mainstream press, with a number of high-profile Australians, including politicians such as Foreign Minister Kevin Rudd, echoing the charge of anti-Semitism in their attacks of the campaign. BDS campaigners described the media and politician attack, coupled with a police crackdown, as a concerted effort to undermine the Boycott Israel movement and quell the protests. In all, 21 people were arrested in Sydney and Melbourne, with most of the protests shut down by the police. Efforts also included attempts by the Victorian state government to criminalise the boycott, asking Australia's consumer watchdog, the ACCC, to investigate the protests. The ACCC found that the boycott protests did not breach any laws. A motion was also passed in federal parliament on August 18 by Liberal Senator Ron Boswell, condemning the BDS movement in Australia and affirming Australia's support and friendship with Israel. Rihab Sharida, Press TV, Sydney.
New allegations today that Israel carried out this week's attack on a missile base in Iran. A man who once headed an Iranian state-run organization and who has close ties to the ruling regime in Tehran was quoted by Britain's Guardian newspaper as saying he believed the explosion was part of the covert war against Iran led by Israel. This follows a report yesterday in Time magazine that quoted a Western intelligence source who also insisted that the Mossad was behind the attack. Officially, Iran said the blast was an accident as explosives were being transferred from one area to another. The explosion killed 17 members of Iran's Revolutionary Guards, including a key figure in their nuclear program, who was also chief of their missile defenses. Iran is morally corrupt and spoiled. Those comments from President Shimon Peres, who told CNN that what is needed is an attack on Iran's moral foundations.
I wouldn't suggest to start immediately with a military operation, nothing at all. I would rather prefer to see a tighter economic sanction, a closer political pressure, and what is lacking very much is an attack in moral sense, because Iran is a spoiled country. It's morally corrupt. Therefore, they're the only country that threatens to destroy another country openly. They hang people. They arrest the opposition. They shoot around. They spread arms. They encourage every center of terror all over the world. It's a danger. And today, terror is a global matter, very much like economy. They can arrive at 9/11 to New York. They can arrive to Chechnya. They can arrive to Moscow. It's mobile and it's dangerous. So I don't think we have to feel alone in that respect.
Could you foresee a situation where Israel may take military action without the whole support of the United Nations or indeed America?
Israel will first of all see what the world is doing. We don't want to jump alone. We are part of the civilization, of the family of international responsible countries. And we expect that the leaders that make a promise will fulfill it.
Americans are used to watching reality TV shows. A new reality show by the American TV channel TLC, titled All American Muslim, follows 5 American Muslim families in an attempt to bridge the gap in public opinions on Muslims. Wafa Jabai reports from Washington.
All American Muslim آخر ابتكارات برامج التلفزيون الواقع في الولايات المتحدة.
All American Muslim is the latest take on reality TV in the United States. Starring in the show are 5 Muslim families in Dearborn, Michigan. The camera crew follows these families, recording 8 episodes of the most intimate details of their lives, their joys and sorrows, and the challenges they face as Muslims. The show presents various characters in an attempt to show the cultural diversity among Muslims, although all of them face the stereotypes they've been stuck with since September 11th.
النمطية التي التصقت بهم منذ أحداث 11 من سبتمبر أيلول كما يقولون.
In the show, we follow Amin's family, a Muslim family who agreed to marry their daughter Shadia to an American man who converted to Islam despite opposition from his mother. We also see Nader and Nawal Aoudi, a young couple expecting their first child. In a completely different example, we follow Nina Bezi, an open-minded blonde girl confronting her conservative community and family.
Another Muslim may think I'm not fully Muslim, but I don't believe that I need to show my religion through my clothing. I don't wear a hijab, and I'm a strong woman, so people don't know how to interact with me.
Take me. Mike Jafar,
a police officer, is living the American dream with his small family. He faces judgments from his senior colleagues simply because he's Muslim. The 5th family is that of Fouad Zaban, who coaches a high school football team. In the show, Fouad says his major challenge is meeting the demands of football as a sport in a school where 90% of its students are Muslims who conform to religious duties, such as fasting during Ramadan. The target audience of the TV show All American Muslim is the American general public, but its debut attracted attention from a large number of Arab and Muslim viewers whose opinions varied on the program. They held panel discussions on social networking sites such as Facebook.
The show did a great job portraying them as Arabs, Muslims, and Americans. It shows the details of what they do in their daily lives.
There are many other cultures out there that are non-Arab, and they're facing what the Arabs are facing. I don't have a problem with the show, except that it should change its name from All American Muslim to All American Arab.
I have to commend TLC for this historic work. It showed the Arabs and Muslims in a positive way.
Dearborn has the largest Arab community in the United States. 1/3 of its residents are of Arab origins, and this is why it was selected. Muslims in America have been subject to harassment since the September 11th incident. While 10 years have passed since the September 11th attacks, a public poll conducted by the Institute for Religious Research shows that 1 out of 2 Americans is annoyed when they see a woman wearing a niqab or men praying in airports. According to the poll, 68% of Americans never mingle with Muslims. Wafa Jabayi, BBC, Washington.
The views expressed on Mosaic are from contributing broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible by grants from the John D. and Catherine T. MacArthur Foundation, the Wincoat Foundation, the Firedoll Foundation, and by support of viewers like you. Thank you. Watch Mosaic World News online. Stay up to date with breaking news, read our blog, get transcripts of past shows, and more at linktv.org/mosaic.
This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. network dedicated to global and national news, uncompromising documentaries, and diverse cultural programs. Programs which connect you to the world.